Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today, February 13, 2022. It's a beautiful day outside, even though I think right now we've got a snowstorm. I hope you guys are all safe. So today we're having our first workshop, first seminar, and we're going to focus on financial planning. They discuss various items of financial planning and the way it speaks to artists. This whole idea came as a result of, we started doing the workshops because when the pandemic started, we realized that quite a few artists contacted us requesting, okay, could we get some financial help? Could we get advances to our performances? And when we probed a bit deeper, we realized most of these artists could not get support from the various government programs simply because they had not filed their taxes and they had not positioned themselves financially to take advantage of the various programs that the government had. And so we thought it wise to prepare something like this so that once we start a program and once we present it to artists, they will be able to get a benefit and get the maximum information on how to structure themselves in their organization financially. Before we start, I'd like to thank the various organizations that have sponsored this program. We've got the TD Bank Group through the Ready Commitment, got Factor, the Toronto Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council. And my name is Peter To. I'm the Executive and Artistic Director of Music Africa, the organization that puts together Afrofest. And on behalf of myself and the rest of the team, the Board of Music Africa, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. And I hope that the information that is shared with you would actually be relevant to your current situation. And that's almost a guarantee that I give to everybody who attends all my lectures. As I say, I believe and I strongly believe that whoever attends it would gain something. There's always information, new information that we present, and new insights that we give to artists to enable them to navigate various situations within the music industry. Now, today's topic is financial planning, and we're going to focus on four specific subjects here. One of how to structure a business. The second is how to negotiate deals. The third is what to look for in contracts. And finally, how to deal with credit. Now, some of these topics, one can say, look, they have quite a very little to do with exact financial management. But on the flip side, if you don't position yourself in a way to, let me say, like negotiation, if you don't position yourself and understand how to negotiate deals as an artist, then it becomes difficult for you to even think about managing finance because the finance is not there in the first place. And this is not something that is taught. Most artists believe, okay, I've become an artist, and through trial and error, I can fix my skills. I very much believe that, yes, that is possible, but it is also important to learn and understand what has been done in the past, what other people have done, and the tricks, some tricks that will help and shorten the learning period. So we're going to start off by talking about how to structure your organization. And so if you understand or if you know business, you would say that three basic forms of organization. You've got a sole proprietorship, you've got a corporation, and then a not-for-profit organization. And the question an artist may ask himself is, which one or how do I structure my organization? Now, I'm going to break them down to you and give you a few of the pros and cons of each in the perspective of an artist. And it is now up to you, the artist, to decide which one fits your situation. And based on that, know what exactly you're going to do. So we're going to start with the sole proprietorship. The sole proprietorship is basically saying you are the business and you take full liability for everything that happens within your business. Now, the advantages of being a sole proprietor is, well, you're your own boss. You answer to yourself. you've got, you can structure the deals that you have depending on what you like. If you don't want to work during a specific period of time, you don't really have to do it. Nobody's forcing you to do anything. Basically, you don't have a boss as a sole proprietor, which means that if you are focusing on your art, it is possible for you to actually focus on it. One of the disadvantages is, as a sole proprietor, even though you're an artist, there are certain avenues and certain grants that you're not really able to get because of the fact that you're a sole proprietor. And it is difficult for the government to track the activities of sole proprietors if they're not reported. Now, anything that is difficult to track, because most artists get paid in cash. So you come to a gig, you say perform at a club. So if you're an artist or a DJ, you perform at a club, at the end of the night, they give you $200 or they give you $300. Now, I don't think, it is advisable that you keep it and you report it. But most artists do not do this. And therefore, if you go at the end of the day and tell the government I made X amount of money at the end of the year, it's going to be difficult for them to track because it was not recorded. And though internally you know you make this money, since the government doesn't know, they cannot support you accordingly. I'll give you an example. When COVID-19 hit, they said to qualify for CERB as a sole proprietor, you need to have made a profit in the previous, I think 2018, 2019. You need to have made a profit within your organization, whether as a sole proprietor or as a corporation, a corporation which is owned by an individual, a profit of $5,000 by the end of the year. Well, most people went in to apply, but most of them never actually had made that amount of money. So they were rejected. However, if all the money that they were making on the side for their side gigs, if all of it was reported, I can almost guarantee you that they would have met up the 5,000 mark. And by doing so, they'll qualify for the support that the government was going to give them. So that's sole proprietorship. It's good, but it doesn't expose the artist to quite a few grants. Your options are quite limited. Now, if you're operating as a corporation, the idea here to structure a corporation is, say you've got a band and people are requesting your band to go work at a show. Now, what you do is you register your band as a corporation. And if somebody wants to pay you, they pay the corporation. Now, once they pay the corporation in turn pays you. It is advantageous because since the money is going to the corporation, if anything goes wrong and somebody decides to sue you as the artist, well, they sue the corporation. And if the corporation has got no money, they will never come after, or they will hardly ever come after your own individual assets. So you're protected like that. However, if you do it that way, then understand that there's going to be some part of a tax liability, because the corporation at the end of the year is taxed, and you as an individual, when you file your own personal taxes, you would also be taxed. Now, if you're working with a good accountant, the accountant can indicate that you own both, and if you own both, you've been taxed on one front. There's some gymnastics that is played legally that will say, okay, look, since we've charged you 15% of a specific amount, and that is the same income that you're reporting here, we cannot go ahead and charge you if your tax bracket is, if your marginal tax rate is, say, 32%. We cannot go ahead and still charge you the same 32%. We have to reduce it because you own a corporation, and for this income, you've already been charged this amount. So that's for the corporation. You can do it to protect yourself as an artist, but it's tricky because you're going to be there's double taxation involved. Now, the third is the not-for-profit organization, which I personally recommend, because as an artist, sometimes you get booked and sometimes you don't get booked. And if you don't get booked, what do? There's a way that, I personally believe that artists have got the power to go out and create some of these opportunities for themselves. Now, if there are limited opportunities when it comes to grants for sole proprietors, and even more limited opportunities because corporations are out to make money. So in the government's mind, why should we be supporting an organization, or why should we have free money to organizations whose sole purpose is to make money? So the grants that are available for corporations are limited. But now when it comes in the case of not-for-profit organization, there are more grants available to them because most not-for-profit organizations are actually doing stuff that in the government's eyes, they cannot do. And so since the government cannot do it, they depend on the skills of various individuals to perform some of these tasks. And in order for that to happen, the government has got to support some of the programs that these not-for-profit organizations are doing. So as an artist, you may not have the number of bookings that you would like to have every year. But if you now change yourself and if you change your mentality from being just an artist to an ideal of, okay, this is what I stand for myself, this is what I stand for within my community. And based on this, I'm going to form a not-for-profit organization whose purpose is to perform 1, 2, 3. If your mission and your vision is strong enough, you can definitely get support from various government agencies and create revenue for yourself and create gigs for yourself. But then on the flip side, there's a level of due diligence. You cannot collect a grant from the government, say, okay, I want to run a project. The government gives you, say, 10,000 or 20,000 to run the project. And out of that, you take 15,000 and pay yourself and say, that's artist fees. No, that's going to be the first and the last time that you get money. So you structure the organization and say, this is what we're trying to do. In it, you say, okay, if I'm the project manager of this particular project that we're doing, as a project manager, I get paid this. And if I'm also performing at this show, I'm going to get this. So you're performing a function that is helping the community, and that and by helping the community, you're also promoting yourself. So my recommendation is either for an artist, it's either you go as a sole proprietor and that you structure your business as a sole proprietorship, or you sponsor yourself as a not-for-profit. Now, there's this misconception with not-for-profit organizations that people feel, well, if you're a not-for-profit organization, it means that you cannot make money. No, that is not true. As a not-for-profit organization, you can make money, as much money as you want. And also, you can save money, as much money as you want. But all the money you make and all the money you save has to be used for the purpose of that not-for-profit organization. You cannot now take the money and put it in your pocket, but you can pay yourself within reason. And if you work hard and your not-for-profit organization grows through your community and through the support that you can get from various sources, as your not-for-profit organization grows, so do you, and you reap the benefits of the work that you've put in. So those are the three basic structures, and I've not mentioned this, but if you have any questions, you can please just put them in the comments. Throughout the lecture, I will read the comments and be answering the questions as we go along. Now, on a personal, when we're talking about the personal finances, there's some questions that I like to ask individual artists. I take, for instance, do you have health insurance or do you have life insurance? Because yes, some people feel as a sole proprietor, I'm active right now, I'm strong, and so I don't really think of insurance. But what happens if you lose that income? What happens if you're not able to work? If you're actually a sole proprietor with no other source of income, then it's difficult for you to go to the government and say, hey, can I get unemployment insurance? And if your savings, if you don't have enough savings, your financial position would really be depleted. So I think it is important that we should have insurance as much as health insurance and life insurance. Now, also the next question is, have you filed your taxes? Now, with COVID-19, I think, and the government programs and the help that the government was giving various organizations, it pushed most people to file the taxes because it was difficult to get any of the help without filing taxes. However, I hope that this is something that can continue. If you file your taxes this year, then continue filing your taxes every year. Do you know what your credit rating is? If you don't know what your credit rating is, I recommend that you please go check your credit rating. And if it is below, okay, if it's above 650, you can get you can get loans from certain lenders. It's going to be difficult, but you can get loans, and these loans will have a higher interest. The better your credit rating, the lower your interest rate. 730 is usually what most lenders look at. So try to grow your credit to be above 730. And I'm hoping that we can have enough time. I'll just give you guys a few tips before the end of this lecture on what to do to grow your credit. We have a question here which says, so there is no advantage for being a corporation as an artist? Not really. Not in the pure sense of it. As the only advantage, in my perspective, is if you are a major artist who is bringing in quite a bit of money every year. You can structure yourself as a corporation and get protected, because people can, like, take for instance the artist, an artist in the caliber of, say, Drake. Of course, he's going to structure himself as a corporation, because if you want to come after him, it's more difficult. You go. If what books him is his corporation, you go after his corporation. If his corporation gets bankrupt, okay, that's his corporation. He's safe. So there's that level of protection because of the amount of money he's making. But as a regular artist within our community, there are limited advantages of being a corporation. There is, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a misconception when it comes to corporations that if you have a corporation, you keep the money to yourself. You're out to make money. Yes, but then when the government knows that your focus is just money, and you go to them and say, "I need help," it's more difficult for you to get the help. But I recommend that no matter what structure of organization you choose, make sure you have an HST number. I personally am a sole proprietor, but even as a sole proprietor, I have an HST number. And I'm going to dive a bit deeper into this. I never prepared this part, but since the question came out, I think I should just touch on it. So most people, they kind of shy away from being a sole proprietor because, yes, they may say the taxes are a bit heavy. But what I recommend that every sole proprietor does is throughout the year, personally, I've got a box by my work table. And every receipt that I have, that if I go out and I spend money on anything, whether it be Uber or anything, and I have a receipt, I print it out and I just keep in that box. So at the end of the year, I now tally everything in that box, because in Canada, we pay taxes. So if I buy something worth $100 to help my business, I don't mean groceries or anything, no. I mean stuff like stuff like if I take a cab ride, say Uber ride for my business, or if I buy, say, ink for my printer, which I'm going to use for my business, I now take that receipt and keep it. At the end of the year, since I've paid taxes on everything, my accountant is going to tally up the amount of taxes I've paid in that year. So let's give an example. If I've paid taxes of, say, $2,600, that's if I spend $20,000 on the business, 13% of that, that's $2,600. So that's how much I paid out in taxes. I file my taxes as a sole proprietor. The government says, well, throughout the year, you've been making money and you've not really paid any taxes. So at the end of the year, the government may give me a tax bill of $4,000. Well, the fact that I have already paid in, I paid $2,600 in some of the stuff that I've been buying, it will help reduce my tax liability to the government. So most sole proprietors do not understand the value of keeping every individual receipt. It's very important. Keep all your receipts, because they'll help you at the end of the day. And that this track that you're keeping, when we apply for grants, sometimes the government is, I would say, especially an organization like Factor, Factor will give you, say, $5,000 as an artist and will tell you, keep every receipt that was used to execute this project. Because sometimes Factor will give a grant and say, you have to come up with 50% of the funds, and we Factor will come up with 50% of the funds. So if you apply for 5,000, the Factor will send you 2,500. And some artists feel they're smart, that they're smart enough. So when they get 2,500, they would say, okay, well, the project costs $3,000. So I don't really have to lay out my own part of the 2,500. And at the end of the project, they would submit receipts to Factor worth 2,500 or worth 3,000. That's great. But now you have an issue with Factor because you would have to explain why you never spent the $5,000. And so based on their calculation, they would not turn back and say, hey, we need a refund from you. If the project was actually $3,000 and we've given you 2,500, then it means that we gave you $1,000 more than we were supposed to give you. Can we have the money back? Then you start scratching your head, which could easily be prevented. So make sure if you keep a track record of all your receipts, and in the case you're applying for a grant, you actually represent yourself correctly and accurately, let me put it that way. Now, so that is on corporations. Now, the next part we're going to go into now is we're going to discuss how to negotiate deals. I personally don't like this topic. If you ask me why I don't like it, I'll tell you that I'm talking to artists who, in the most part, are going to be negotiating with me. So basically, I'm telling, I'm giving artists information on how to use or what to use against me, which I'm comfortable doing. And the main reason is because it's a learning process. And I feel that if you're not only going to be dealing with me, you're dealing with every other organization. And as an artist within the African entertainment industry, I'm hoping that we can equip ourselves with the most amount of information to put us in positions to succeed. So the points that I'm going to mention are not in any specific order. I just wrote them down. So please, it's not this one comes first and this one comes, just take note of them. The first one is understand your position in every negotiating situation. Understand what position you have. So are you actually in a position to negotiate? If you say apply for a job, say at, let's say, Walmart, or say the Bay, or say at TD Bank, or wherever you apply for the job, and they tell you that this job pays $25 an hour. Now, that's the job, that's what is being offered. In the job description, they told you that's the pay. You've gone in and applied, and that's what they're offering. If at the end of the day, you now turn around and say, look, now that I've gotten this job, can we renegotiate my salary? You're creating a situation that was not supposed to be created. And it's very easy for the person who you're talking to now look at you as being somebody who's problematic. And one thing that we should try to avoid as much as we can is don't ask for something you know you cannot get. So it means you're trying to test the other person. And if the other person, the person you're negotiating with, the person knows that this is what you're doing, you know you cannot get it, but you're just testing the system, you create a rift, you're creating more enemies, which really doesn't help your position in the long run and doesn't help your reputation. So if you know that you're not in a position to negotiate, don't negotiate. Now, as a rule of thumb, and this works, I can say almost 95% of the time, if not 100, usually the person who has the least to lose is the person who wins the negotiation. So remember this, the person who, if you're desperate, the more desperate you are, the more the higher the tendency for you in a negotiation to lower your value because of the desperation. So how do we combat this? Make sure before you go into every negotiation, you've got options. Know what your options are, and make sure that you're in a position to take advantage of whatever options you have if that specific negotiation doesn't work out. Because if you go into a negotiation thinking that the person that you're negotiating with is going to look out for your own interest over his, that hardly ever happens. So everybody in a negotiation is looking out for their own interest. So make sure you position yourself as best as possible to take care of your own self. Now, when you're negotiating, there's going to come a time when money is going to be mentioned. And especially like somebody like myself, sometimes I'll call up an artist and I'll say, okay, how much are you charging for a show? Now, artists will look and say, well, Peter, you work for Music Africa. I don't know what your budget is. So could you make an offer? It is always good to ask the person that you're negotiating with to make the offer. So you don't lay your cards on the table first. And this is tricky because now I'm telling the artist to make the offer. And when I'm going to negotiate with an artist, I know I would like them to make an offer. So the way I navigate this situation for myself is I know what my budget is. And so in most situations, I just tell the artist, this is what I'm working with. And at that point, it is, okay, can we go above? Can we go below? And it hardly ever, there's hardly a fluctuation, a big fluctuation, because what we do has every project that we execute has got a budget. But it's always advisable to, when you go into a negotiation, tell the person who you're negotiating with to say their offer. And it may get a bit difficult when you make this statement. What I advise, make the person to feel that they have a leg up, they are more powerful in that negotiation. So you say something along the lines of, if you're negotiating with Music Africa, you can say, well, I've never worked with an organization like yours, or ever since I've worked with you, I've worked with other organizations, and I don't know how much you guys have grown. So could you please just give me an idea as to how much you paid other artists? Or could you just give me an idea as to how much we're talking about? Now, more often than not, if you're talking to a major organization, especially in the art industry, they will tell you the price. Every artist has got potential to negotiate. But if you're negotiating, or if you're proposing a higher offer, you need to ask yourself, what am I bringing to the table to help? It's not advisable to get into a situation in which you say, I'm going to charge you XYZ more, without explaining to the person who you're charging more why you think more than what you're asking for. Personally, before I call every artist, and this is information that artists don't know, but I'll say it. Before I speak to an artist, I do research. I research that individual artist. I go maybe on their Instagram page or go on their Facebook page. I look for flyers that artist has been on. Now, if I see a flyer that the artist has been on, I will know what show they have worked with. And more often than not, I know the person who organized that show. So I'll call that person up and say, hey, how much do you usually pay your artist? I may not call that specific artist name, but I say, could you give me a range? And since we are both in the business and they also call me sometimes and ask questions, they will give me that information freely. Now, when they give me this information, it will give me an idea as to how much you as an artist can take. So when I'm coming to the table, sometimes I offer an amount which is higher than that. I would say most times I usually, for African artists in Canada, I offer an amount higher than that. So if the artist now sees my offer and says, no, it's not enough, and they go way higher than that, I know you're trying to be unrealistic. And at that point, I'm comfortable taking a step back and saying, you know what? It's difficult for us to reach an agreement, walk away. Because I know what you're taking from other people. There is no point for you to take a specific amount from other people. And then when you meet me, you feel that you should take more. It doesn't work that way. Now, the next point is, if you're not comfortable in a specific situation, if you're doing a deal with somebody and they've put you in an uncomfortable spot, so they're asking you questions and making certain requests which you feel jeopardize your position in that negotiation, what you can do is don't make a decision on the spot, but leave the door open to come back. So gather as much information as possible. Ask as many questions as possible. And then tell the person you're negotiating with that, you know what? I've got 1 or 2 partners that I work with. So even though I appreciate your offer right now, I cannot really accept it because I have to go back and consult with my team. So please, would you permit me to go back and discuss with them? I'll get back to you within next 1 day, within the next 24 hours, within the next 48 hours, whatever the case may be. So you guys have that understanding. So this way, you take the information and go back. It gives you time to breathe. It gives you time to reorganize yourself and assess the situation and ask yourself, am I putting myself in the best position to succeed? If you are, then you can move ahead. If you're not putting yourself in that position, then you can conveniently call that individual and say, look, this is my position. Thank you very much for the offer. And you walk away peacefully. In doing that, never completely close the door. Never get angry and just walk away and say, no, this person has undervalued me. He doesn't respect me in anything, and walk away. Don't do that. Because the examples I give through my experiences with, at Music Africa. You see, most times people who just walk away, people who walk away from a negotiation will feel that they will not have to deal with me in the next 2 years' time. But guess what? By the grace of God, 2 years' time, I'm here. And that same person, maybe I'm running a project this time, I've decided to do a project in Africa, or I've decided to do a project somewhere. I'm taking artists from Toronto to go to Vancouver on a project. And this person wants to be on that project. But because they had told me that they're not interested in working with me, or we left on such bad terms through a negotiation, they cannot face me anymore. And believe me, it happens 100% of the time. That's when they start calling everybody who knows me. Hey, can you talk to Peter on my behalf? Hey, Peter, and I start getting all these calls. Peter, can you think of hiring these artists? Wow, they've been doing some very good work. You know, I think you should look at them. And when I start getting all those calls, I know exactly what's happening. So I cannot tell you how I react to it, but I'm just telling you that it's not the best position to put yourself in as an artist. Always the price that you quote should be reasonable. If you're the one who is saying your price, make sure it is reasonable. Make sure that the person who is accepting, or the person you're talking to, if it's a smaller organization that is trying to hire you, understand where they're coming from. Talk to them. Get as much information as possible. And this particular point that I'm going to give, I like it a lot, because money is not everything. So when you're going into a negotiation, sometimes you need to ask yourself, what am I going to benefit out of this deal? Maybe the money is not good, but maybe that show has got an audience which you can tap into. So if that is the case, then go. Take the lesser amount of money, but you knowing that you're going to perform in front of an audience that, if they like your music, will advance your career. This is a mistake that is made by artists. I will not say a mistake per se, but a missed opportunity. When artists are hired for shows, most times they may go to the show by themselves, or they may take one extra person and go with their manager, whoever, or say, hey, I've got friends I'd like to bring to the show. And the artist will go and perform, nice, do an excellent performance. And at the end of the show, the artist will say, I did a good job. And everybody will tell the artist, congratulations. And they will go follow you on Instagram. They will follow you on Facebook, Twitter, and all whatnot. Two things I say about that. It's very rare for the artist to turn around and ask the person who hired them, did I do a good job? Do you actually appreciate my performance? Because if you do a show and it's great and the audience likes you, but the person who hired you, who actually put money in your pocket, didn't appreciate the show, that person is not going to hire you again. And that person is not going to recommend you. So even though you're building your fan base, you're not going to have money. You're going to be popular and broke. Now, is that what you want? Because if that's what you want, then don't ask. But if you're looking for more opportunities, then I recommend at the end of every show, you ask the person who hired you, are you happy with my performance? Is there anything you did not like? Is there something that I can improve? If you do that, you take from each experience and you grow. The next thing is individual artists I feel they've got a power that they're not tapping into. So take, for instance, an artist goes for a show by themselves, or they take a manager and go to the specific show. All they do is they perform, and the manager is like, yeah, I'm a manager. That's my artist. You see, my artist is good. You're not working. What I recommend you do is take a pen and a paper to every show. Hey, if you like the show, could you please write your email address here so that I'm creating a mailing list so that whenever I have a show coming up, I can inform you. So as an artist, you create a database of people who are inclined to listen to you, people who have already watched you, people who know you, people who like the way you present yourself, people who like your music. Maybe you can have a newsletter for these people to tell them how you're progressing. It's different from what you do on Instagram. It's different from what you do on Facebook. Because if you present yourself as a professional through email, through a newsletter to these individuals, the next time you have a show and you say you have, for instance, 2,000 emails in that specific, in your email list, if you send 2,000 else out, you're going to sell out your show. You sell out at least 150 tickets because a conversion rate that's even less than 10%. If you're expecting a conversion rate of 10% and you have 2,000 emails, I mean, you're expecting 200 people. So at that point, sometimes you may not even need somebody to book you. You can go out, do the work, sell tickets for a specific price. If you're selling a ticket for $25, $30, you sell a ticket for $25, $30, and at the end of your show, you're making $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, which no promoter in Toronto is going to pay you that amount of money. And building your financial, as an artist, building your financial base is what makes you more powerful. It's what makes you more palatable to other promoters. And it's what opens horizons for you to say, I can now stop from being a local artist, a domestic artist, to a national artist where I'm being called other places. If you don't have a solid financial base, if you're doing a 9-to-5 job, and most of the money that you're doing for your 9-to-5 job is being used to support your artistic career, at some point, you're going to go tired if you're not reaping the benefit. So if you create a system in which you have a way to capitalize on every single individual who watches you, that's an easy way to advance your career. Another point is when you go out to negotiate and you're presented with an offer, let the person who is make a comment to let the person know that, okay, this is fair, this is not fair, or whatever the case may be, but let the person know. And sometimes it may not be fair, you may want more. It's not advisable to tell the person, pay me $500 more without explaining why you want the extra money. So what I recommend is, if I present, instead of me saying what I recommend, I'll just give you a short story which would say the point. I hired a group to perform 3 years ago. And this guy he just came to Toronto. He said, Peter, I'm an artist. I'm just looking for opportunities. I hear that you present shows. So could you give me a show? And after sending me emails, I think the guy sent me about 4 to 5 emails. I'm like, okay, I have a show coming up. Can you come perform? Now, at this point, I offered the show itself, offered $500. I never knew who this artist was. I had never worked with him before. $500 was a reasonable risk for me to take. I said, okay, will you accept the $500? He said, no problem. He collected the $500 from me and came out to perform. But when he came, his whole crew, 12 people, all of them in uniform, all of them conducted themselves extremely professionally well. I personally felt guilty for paying $500 for that because I appreciated what the audience did, or what he did for the audience, because he inevitably raised the level of the show that we did. So after his performance, we had a conversation. The next time, the Beaches Jazz Festival called me and said, hey, Peter, I'm looking for an artist to perform at a specific event. He was the first artist I thought about, because if he could do that for me, that he never knew who I was, I think that he's going to do the same for the Beaches Jazz Festival. And secondly, the next time that I was hiring him, I could not say 1,500. I had to triple my offer. And the next time I hired him, when I hired him, he even came better than what he did previously. So the more he did, the more I realized I had to do more, because I'm looking at it like it's going to be unfair on me to call him knowing that he's going to come 12, 14 people deep, all of them on stage, all of them in uniform, well organized. I'm looking at that at the end, how much do they spend on rehearsals? How much am each of them going to get out of the show? I need to do more for this guy. On the flip side, so he has created his own negotiation power through his work. It's easy to be seen. When he tells me that, Peter, I need to be paid this, if I don't have it, I don't call him. And if I have it, I'll definitely call him because I know he's worth it. But most artists, they look at it and say, well, this show only offers me $200. So I'm going to put in $200 worth of work, not knowing that maybe there's somebody like myself who looks for artists that is in the audience, but you don't know. And you go on stage, you don't represent yourself appropriately. Or you go on stage and maybe, and I've seen it in the past, you forget your lyrics because the person never paid you well, or because it's a free show. And 2-3 months later, you now send me an email, or you call me and say, I'm looking for a show. And this is my bio, this is a sample of what I can do. Well, you don't know that I've already seen you and I know what you can do. Why should I hire you? You know, so your negotiation capability also depends on the strength of the work that you've done in the past. The stronger the work you've done, the better the position you put yourself in to demand for more. And sometimes it is okay to say no, you know, but when you're saying no, never close the door. When you're saying no, show the person that you're saying no to that you're worth more than what the person is offering by actually sending them stuff. Hey, this is the work that I've done in the past. These are the people I work with. This is the caliber of the team that I have. I'm working with 12 people, I'm working with 14 people. So this amount of money is not enough to pay all of us. When you do this and put that person in your own position, it makes it easy for them to say, you know what, let me go back, talk to the people I'm working with, and if it's possible, I'll offer you more. And throughout the process, don't get angry, don't shout, don't say anybody's trying to take advantage of you. Don't feel that to some extent, somebody owes you anything. No, don't do that. Represent yourself professionally and try to get the best out of every deal. Now, so these are just a few tips that I wrote down when it comes to negotiation. The others here, however, I realized that we've been doing this for about 52 minutes. So I'm going to switch topics. If you have any questions throughout as we're doing this, you can just write the questions on the messaging board here. I'll read it, and I'm going to answer as we go along. Now, once you've negotiated, somebody's going to offer you a contract. What do you look for in a contract? And I'm not looking at it, the general part of the contract. I'm just looking at the elements that pertain to money, the financial part of it. What do you look for? Obviously, you want to make sure that the amount that is offered is exactly the amount that is on the contract. You want to make sure that your name is written correctly, and those are the basics. But you also need to ask yourself, who are you working for? And this is particularly important because, so take for instance, if you are hired to perform at a show with somebody who doesn't have a solid reputation, then that is what people who see you would think about you. They would associate you as the artist to that caliber of person. And when that happens, you put yourself in a detrimental position when it comes to negotiating a deal and how much you actually get paid. If you're an artist who demands more for yourself, there are certain places that you will not perform, there are certain places that you will not go, there are certain things you will not do. Because once you do them, you reduce your value. As an artist, you are a brand. And you should remember that. Irrespective of what you do, you've become a public figure, or the levels of the public figures that have got 1 million fans, and the public figures that are just known within their community. But the fact that most of the time when you're in public, you are actually addressing people through your art. If you're among 20 people, you are always in front of the 20 people presenting, or more often than not, you're in front of them presenting. If you're in front of 100 people, you're there presenting. You are a public figure because they know you, you don't know them. And they will see you in town. They will see you interacting. If you don't conduct yourself well, knowing that you're a brand, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, it affects your price if any of these people want to negotiate with you. Now, make sure you have the date and time of every show clearly stated, and give yourself enough time for rehearsals and planning and everything. The more time you have to prepare for a show, one, the better the show is going to be without procrastination. Please, that's something I really advise against. Try as much as possible not to procrastinate. Prepare very well for every show, irrespective of the size of the show. The more time you have, the better the show is going to be, and the better the show is, the higher your value. The higher your value, the more you get paid. The more you get paid, the richer you get. Everybody likes money, I hope. So that's these are a few things that you have to make sure in your contract. Also, the venue, where exactly are you going to be performing? If you go out, and sometimes you ask, okay, how many tickets have been sold? How many people do you expect to come for this show? If you are hired for a show that the performer is not strong enough, or that the promoter is not strong enough, and in the audience, you just have a 5-man, a 10-man audience because the work has not been well done. There are two sides of this. If you present a good show, irrespective of the size of the audience, then the 5 people can multiply into 10, into 15, into 20, based on the work you've done. But on the flip side, somebody can look at it and go, so this person can only attract 5 people. If I bring this person to a paid show, that's $100. Why would I pay XYZ artists more than 100, knowing that if I do a show with them, all I can get is 100? I'm in the business of making money. So even though you've collected money for a show and very few people have come out to your show and you feel, yes, I've already been paid. No. In future, anybody who knows that there were not so many people for your show will say, this person is not worth this much money, and so they will not pay you. It affects your bottom line. So this is what we look for in contracts. This is what we also look for in contracts. This is also how we negotiate deals. The next thing I'm going to get into is, and this is the final element, which is I'm going to talk a bit about credit, how to manage it, and some interesting financial tips. Now, so with credit, the question that I ask usually when I ask people is, who do you bank with? And who should you bank with? Because most people just say, hey, you know what? There's TD in almost every street corner. So I'm going to bank with TD. It's more accessible. That's great. But everything is connected. We've got various credit reporting systems. We've got TransUnion, Equifax, Borrowell, Credit Karma. All of these guys, they gather information, and based on that information, they create a credit record for us. And I can guarantee you, if you go check your credit score in all of these credit bureaus, it's going to be different. It's not equal across the board, and it's different because each organization they use different parameters. So if you ask, who do you bank with? What I always say is, know what your credit score is with all of the credit bureaus. And then look for the highest credit score, and then look for the bank that uses that highest credit score to make their lending decisions. That is where you need to align yourself. Because in that case, you're positioning yourself, you're putting yourself in the best possible position to get a loan or to get a mortgage or whatever when the need comes. But if you just go bank with anybody, maybe you decide to go bank with an organization that uses, say, Credit Karma. And when if your credit rating is low with Credit Karma and you bank with them, you're creating a record with that bank, but your credit score is low. So when they check, they'll say, look, we cannot really help you out because your credit score is low, even though you spent years with them. So recommendation, please know who your bank is, know what your credit score is, know which bank uses that exact credit bureau, know what bank uses the credit bureau that has your highest credit score, and align yourself with that bank. That puts you in the best possible position. And I think CBC actually did a very good report on this in Marketplace. It's about a 20 to 30 minute short documentary. So if you could just check CBC Marketplace, you'll find quite a bit of what I'm saying there. Now, some of the other financial tips that I have is there are ways individuals can make money, there are ways individuals can save money without actually, without putting much stress on yourself. Like I'll say something that I do. Personally, I don't use my debit card much. I can use my debit card to pay my rent. I think that's the only thing that I use my debit card for. The rest, I use my credit card. And the reason I use my credit card to pay everything off is because I know when I spend on my credit card, I get points. So at the end of every year, I get almost $500 in points, which I can now use to do whatever I want to do. And so that is money that I've made. I never really worked. It's just me spending. But the trick here is don't allow the bill, don't say, okay, I've made the expenditure. I'm going to wait for my credit card bill to come in the mail, then I pay it off. If you do that, you're spending money instead. It's going to cost you more. Because take, for instance, if your interest rate is, say, 19%, if your interest rate is 19%, this means that per month, the interest rate is 19 over 12, that's about 1.5. Okay. So if you spend from your credit card, so if you spend, say, $2,000 per month is 1.5%. So on $2,000, you're looking at, or say, let's make it easy, $1,000. So if it's $1,000 per month, that's $15 you're going to spend in interest. on the credit card. But if you pay it off immediately, you spend, because each credit card has got a threshold of maybe about 3 weeks, or some have 2 weeks. If you pay this amount off immediately, you spend it, you do not trigger the interest rate. And at that point, you're just spending and getting money out of the credit card. You're taking advantage of the perks of the credit card and actually making money by spending money. The other thing that I recommend is, if you organize yourself well, you should never pay any banking fees. So with a place like with TD, or most of these banks, they say there's a minimum limit you can have. If you have above the limit, you don't pay. Or there are free banks. There's Tangerine, there's PC Financial. Yes, one may say they are not quite accessible. You don't have branches at every corner and all whatnot. That is true. But if you use them, you don't get to pay any fees. And on average, banking fees in Canada cost anywhere between $150 to up to $300 every year, depending on who it is and depending what package you have. So if you don't get to pay anything in banking fees, that means you save yourself $150, between $100 and $350. So if I'm looking at, okay, say myself, if I don't pay any banking fees, I've saved 150 in banking fees plus 500 on my credit card. That is $650 just from the lifestyle that I have, which helps. Another tip for individuals who are trying to grow their credit is do not procrastinate. Make sure that you pay your bills on time and live within your means. Now, this is specifically important to artists, and I see this all the time. An artist will go for a show, or say a DJ will go for a show, perform at this show, get paid $200, $300. And guess what? Use it to buy a bottle. Have a good drink, share with friends. At the end of the night, he walks home with $20 in his pocket. That is not recommended. If you actually want to grow as an artist, then use the money that you're making to improve your craft, to actually develop yourself. I'm not saying that don't go out and have fun, but growth has to be intentional. Growth hardly ever happens by mistake. It can take a while. It can take ages. It may take decades, but it has to be intentional, meaning we have to keep on working towards it. I see a question here. So what if you're not the organizer of an event, but just an artist that is invited and the audience is mostly 5-10 people? Can this affect how promoters see you? Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, 100%. So if just look at what is happening. And sometimes we should take examples from key or successful individuals within the industry. Most of the key artists in the industry have got marketing companies that they work with. So when you hire them, they actually engage a marketing company to help market the show, because they know that their brand actually depends on it. And if you as an artist, when somebody hires you, one thing you can do to help your position is you ask yourself, or you tell the person, even though you're hiring me as an artist, these are the other things that I am able to do. I'm not a one-dimensional individual. Within the community, I do other things. Within the community, I'm also connected like this. And what this does is it makes this person to think about calling you not only when they have a show, but when they face a problem within the industry. If you tell an event organizer that, yes, you're hiring me right now, but if you check my profile, you can see that I'm connected to all these other people, or I know how to do this apart from just performing. Say, take for instance, there are some artists who are very good photographers, or there are some artists who are very good organizers themselves. And maybe I'm presenting a show and I can tell you, I can guarantee you this, I've done this in the past. I'm organizing a show that I cannot be there. And an artist has told me that, look, Peter, I'm a very good organizer. I call the artist up and say, look, you have presented events, so you know, you have been at events, so you know what to look for. Could you go to this event and help me be the organizer, be the man at the door, or the person putting everybody in check? So this actually helps. It helps to present yourself not as a one-dimensional individual. And just to fortify the point, or to reiterate the point that I made, even if you're performing to a small audience, 5, 10, 15 people, it affects you. So what you can do in this situation is make sure, even if it is only one person in that audience, produce a stellar show. Make it up in your mind, I'm performing in front of 100 people, 1,000 people. Treat that person like the person is the king of the world. Don't make them uncomfortable by asking them personal questions. No, you're there for a show, do your best. What will happen, I believe that if you do that, that one person, even the promoter, will have a good impression about you. It is very difficult to perform in front of an empty audience. I 100% understand, but also one can say that's when you actually know the skill of an individual artist. And as an artist, in order to prevent having an audience of just 5 to 10 people, make sure that every show you go to, you market it, and make sure you've got a fan base that can follow you to that show. People who root for you. So when you're going out, you know, no matter what, even if there's only one person there, I've got my die-hard fans, maybe 5 or 6 people that will come watch me. So I'm good. And at that point, you have fun. You have fun wherever you go. Somebody's asking if they check credit score before you get approved for grants. No, nobody will ever ask. I've never heard of a situation where somebody is asking for a credit score before you get approved for grants. That is not a prerequisite. However, they do ask for, do not ask for taxes, no. But they will ask for specific figures that you can get only if you file your taxes. So they'll say, what is, they can ask for your, there's a specific number they ask for, either for your revenue or your net income, which is revenue expense, the difference between your revenue and your expenses. So once you report that figure, they will know, okay, this person is doing well in his business, or the person is not doing well in their business. They may also ask you for a figure like your net assets. So which is cumulative, which is, okay, maybe your net income for this 1 year is great, but then last year you did so bad that, say you carry a deficit of, last year had a deficit of say 50,000, for instance. And this year you did good in your business, you had a positive of 10,000. Your net assets is still negative 40,000. So even though this year is, okay, yes, I'm good, I've made 10,000 extra, considering that last year you carried a $50,000 debt, it reflects on this year. And this is why this is important. The way the government looks at it is they don't want to be funding liabilities. They don't want to be funding your losses. So as an organization, if you are carrying a liability of, say, $10,000, and you go to the government and say, can I get a grant for $10,000? And they look at your financial statement and they feel that your losses are $10,000. In their mind, they're thinking, you will have to pay this debt, which means if we give you exactly $10,000, that money is just going to go in to pay that debt. How are you going to execute on the project? Somebody's going to lose, and the government does not want to lose. So there's a very high tendency they will not give you the money, not because you're not worth it, but because you're carrying a deficit. You've got a negative net asset value. So to answer your question directly, no, they don't check your credit score, but they do check. They tell you to report what your net assets are, or sometimes your net income. How do you get the best booking agent, and what will the cheapest one? Okay, so these questions are now, we're getting out of finance, because we're now, we're just, I would say, I'll consider the question and answer session of this talk. And I'm comfortable answering any questions that you have, whether it be on the financial side of the business, whether it be on the artistic side of the business, considering that I've worked in both. I can definitely answer this question. So just to reiterate the question, how do we get the best booking agent, and what will be the what will the cheapest one be? Now, there's hardly ever anything like a cheap booking agent. There is a valuable booking agent. Cheap is not always the best. Now, if you go to music expos, there's Mondial in Montreal that happens every year. There is, if you're, as an African artist, if you're looking at going international, you can go to the Atlantic Music Expo, which happens in Cape Verde. Visa for Music happens in Morocco, or Music in Africa puts together Access that rotates. And this year is going to be in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Now, at music expos, and there are quite a few in Canada, even say the Canada Music Week, they've got music agents there. They've got music professionals of various levels in the industry. Now, what is recommended is you go to such expos, because all these professionals, the booking agents and all these people, they attend, and some of them have stands at this event. So as an artist, you go to them, look at whoever aligns with you and say, can I work with you? And the mistake people make is, let me work with one booking agent. No. If you want to work with 4 booking agents, have non-exclusive contracts with all of them. The job of the booking agent is to get you gigs. And when the booking agent gets you a gig, get a percentage of the gig that they get you. So your own job is to present yourself in the best possible way that every booking agent will want to align themselves with you. Now, when they align themselves with you, they would now start asking, they will present you things, and they will make suggestions that will help you grow, and that will help you to be more marketable. And they will now take you as an artist and start selling you to various organizations. Now, within the African music industry, there has been a change from the way it is being presented, the way it is being packaged. If you look at a performance, if you call somebody like Femi, we're having Femi Kuti at Afrofest this year. So a performance that he is going to present is going to be very traditional, with all these, let me say, traditional drums and the talking drum and all whatnot, saxophone, which is great. Most North American booking agents look for groups that have very traditional African elements in them. If you play the mbira, if you play a locally made African saxophone or locally made African guitar, or if a crew that is predominantly that your instruments are predominantly made with local equipment, you are more marketable, because they are most of the non-African booking agents and audiences, they were like, wow, this is something that we never knew could be done. It's something different. Let's see what kind of sound these guys can create. But the new artists this time around, they create it's more digital music, Afrobeat and all whatnot. Even though the sound is more refined and better, it doesn't speak as well to the non-African audience. And so your core market now is booking agents like, booking organizations like Afrofest, whose main mission is to promote African artists, and looking for booking agents in Africa, because they are the ones who promote music in Africa. So the question is, how do we get shows in Africa? How do we get those booking agents in Africa to understand and see what we do and get some shows there? That's a whole different workshop. If you guys want me to do a workshop on how to break into markets and stuff like that, please let me know. I would say there's a method to that madness, which it's quite elaborate, and I'm not difficult to get into here, but I'm willing to do that on a separate occasion. Say one question is, Why don't most promoters value dancers as artists? Why? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. I've not, I don't know this. So if you're saying it, then I'm going to take your word for it. But I don't think it is that a promoter doesn't value dancing as art. The question is, how do most dancers present themselves? Because, and I can tell you this from my own experience, there's a dance group that I've hired them 3 times and I don't want to hire them anymore. And the reason I'm not hiring them anymore is not because they're not good. But the first time that I hired them, I watched their routine and I went, wow, that's great. The second time they did the same thing. And the third time they did the same thing. No creation. And that even goes the same thing to artists. If every time you present the same set, it gets boring, especially for dancers. So instead of us looking at it like, why are most dancers not really considered artists? I would say, how can dancers position themselves in such a way that they are viewed as artists? And if you ask me, I would more likely say, if you go on stage alone as a dancer, it's difficult for you to impress an audience. If you go as a group of 4 or 5 people, a well-oiled machine to perform, you will be respected as an artist. I know dance crews in Toronto right now who are highly valued as artists and who in fact get grants from the Toronto Arts Council, from the Ontario Arts Council, and even from various organizations because they presented themselves as artists that are affiliated, that are connected to a certain demographic and a certain type of art, and all they do is dance. So dance is respected. It is just, how are you presenting yourself to show that this is exactly what you do, this is the kind of dance that you're, and it's not, okay, I'm a solo act. That's going to be very difficult for a dancer to pull. But if you have a dance crew, a dance group, and wherever you go as a group, it makes it easier for people to respect the craft because a lot goes into putting a group together. So yes, that is the last question that we have here. Any other questions? Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'd just like to let you know that we have some other workshops coming up. So on March 27th, which is in 2 weeks' time, we have a workshop on performance art, which is going to be presented by Josh Grossman. Now, Josh Grossman is the artistic director of the Toronto Downtown Jazz Festival. And the reason why I personally like working with Josh is, so somebody asked me, say, look, you know what, he's not African. Why are you bringing him to speak to a predominantly African audience? And I go, well, we operate in this space and we would like to be hired by everybody, not only hired by African organizations. And so he receives applications, he receives more applications per year than I do. Like at Music Africa per year, I receive anywhere between 80 and 120 applications to perform at various shows. He receives upwards of 500 to perform at the Jazz Festival. So, and he also works with African artists. So if he comes in to talk to us about what he's expecting the artists who apply to a show like his, I think we should take it seriously because he's giving us a perspective that will make us more marketable to audiences that do not look like us. Then the next workshop we have is on April 10th, and that is going to cover public support for artists. So how do we get grants? What grants are available for artists? How do we position ourselves? How do we best position ourselves to get support? And that's going to be presented by Kayla McGee, a longtime friend. I've worked with her in Toronto now for over 9 years. So, and I trust she's extremely talented. On April 24th, we have music marketing. So how do we, most artists will say that creators, how do they sell their music in this space? Ian Andre is as a marketer, where he has worked with Ryerson University, worked with Humboldt College, all on marketing music, and especially not only marketing music, but marketing music which is non-traditional, Canadian. So it's not marketing hip hop or marketing rap or stuff like that. No, it's marketing other genres of music within the Canadian space. So it's going to come talk on that. On May 22nd, we have Legal Aspects in Music by Byron Pascoe. Most artists, like, what do we look for as an artist? How do we structure ourselves best legally? Byron is going to talk to us about that. And then on June 10th is entrepreneurship, ideas on how to make money. It's, as an artist, some of us can say, look, all we do is we perform and we get paid. But the other things artists can do to make money, which is not just direct, which doesn't just depend on performances, but also on other facets of the entertainment industry. That's something that we're going to cover on June 10th. And the show on June 10th is done in collaboration with the African Music Week, put together by Aim for Africa. I think I see another question here. It says, how much do professional grant writers charge? It depends. It can go anywhere from 5% of the grant, depending on how much the grant is, to 20%. Yeah, some grant writers will charge a base fee plus a percentage. Now, the question is great, but I think that if you approach it this way, we're selling ourselves short. So grant writers don't like to lose. I don't like to go ahead and write a grant knowing that if I apply for this grant, I will not get the money. What's the point? Which means I've wasted my time and I've set anticipation. I'm not supposed to do that. So you as an artist, you need to be able to speak with a grant writer and create a project, or explain to the grant writer exactly what you are trying to do. And once you do that, the grant writer, if the grant writer is worth their salt and they know exactly what they're doing, they will be able to fine tune whatever you're doing to be acceptable and to be more interesting to the grant officers. And in that way, it's easier for you to get support. So if you're just going in to say, I have this project, I want to get a grant for it, without initially engaging a grant writer and getting them to asking them, would you be able to be successful if you write a grant like this? That's the first question you need to ask. So let them look at it through the lens of the grant writer. If the project makes sense, they will know. And I'm saying this because working with Music Africa, I can tell you that there's some projects that we apply for, and we know, yes, this is a project that is going to be supported. And sometimes we apply, we get a letter saying, you know what, your application makes sense, we appreciate what you're doing, but the fund right out of that particular program ran out of funds. So you're recommended, but you will not get the money. That's understandable, but at least they know the work that is coming down the pipeline. So it's always good to ask the grant writer if they'll be successful before negotiating a price. And most grant writers will ask for a base price. So for my time, I'm going to put in maybe 5 hours, 10 hours. So I'm going to charge maybe $200, $300, $500 for my time. And then a percentage, if I'm applying for $20,000 grant, and we finally get maybe 15,000, I would like to get 5% of that, or 10% or 15%, depending on the grant writer. But anything more than 20%, I'm going to say, please don't engage, walk away. One of the things, but generally you do agree that singers are paid more than dancers, even if it's a dance crew that present themselves in a professional manner. Now, I cannot speak for the rest of the music industry. I can speak for myself, and I'll say no. When I'm looking to hire artists, I go based on if I'm looking to if I'm hiring for shows, I'm saying, look, okay, every 15 minutes is worth X amount of dollars, and that's the way I calculate it. And depending on the size of the crew, I offer similar rates. I don't look and say, okay, because it's a dance group, I'm only going to pay this amount, and because it's a singer, I'm also going to pay. I'm only going to pay this amount. Now, what you also need to pay attention to, it's now what we're doing here is we are outward. We're looking outwards. You're saying, why is the industry not seeing me in a specific light and paying me in a specific light? Let's also look inwardly. How popular are you? How many people know you and say, this person is extremely proficient in what they do, and I would like to see them again? It's easy for artists artists to get that, you know, and no disrespect to dancers, and no disrespect to actors or any other kind of art. Music plays a different type of role. And why do I say this? If you like a specific song, you can play that song, replay and replay and replay, and that song over your lifetime carries you. It makes you think about moments that you spent maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago. Music does that to you. Dance hardly ever does that to people. So it is the nostalgia that music is capable of creating that maybe makes people to attach more value to artists and people who are creating that music. So dancers come in as performers, benefiting off the work that musicians have done. And maybe that's why there's that conception that dancers may be inferior to singers. But to me, I don't. When I'm hiring artists at Music Africa, I don't really look at it that way. I just look at, okay, are you capable of doing a good show? And if you're able to do a good show, I'm open to working with you. If you ask me, if you say for any kind of advice, I'll say, as a dancer, you present yourself in a professional manner. That's great. What kind of show are you presenting? You know, is it, here's something interesting. When you go out to do a show as a dancer, the dance moves that you're doing, are they dance moves that anybody in the audience can go, I know how to do that move? Because no matter how the choreography is and how organized you are, if the moves that are being made are common to or are easily done by the people in that room, that nobody can go, wow, I've never seen that before. I've never seen somebody do something like that before. If you're not able to do that, then it's difficult for somebody to consider you extraordinary because you're doing something which is considered ordinary. So think about how to transform whatever set you have. And it doesn't have to be something out of this world. No, it may just be the way you organize yourself on stage and the way you choreograph it. People can have different type of handshakes, and a very complicated handshake may get an applause, but it's just a handshake, you know. So with dancers, it's a bit more tricky, or it's a bit trickier, but it's still possible to elevate yourself to the level of singers. Let's see what other comment we have here. Is it because promoters know that singers will sell more? No, not necessarily. If we're looking at the local music scene, if we're looking at local music scene, how many artists do we know can actually go out and sell more than, say, 500 tickets for a show? It's very difficult to pull that off locally in Toronto at this point. Local artists hardly do that. So I would not say that it is they're paid, that dancers are paid less because artists can do more. No. And if you don't mind, this is not something that I knew about. So I would like to talk to other music promoters other event organizers to get their perspective on this. So I'm going to type in my email address. Yeah, so that is my email address. If you would like to send me an email later on, I can do some research and give you some insights, not only as to the reason why dancers may be paid less, but what you as a dancer can do to increase the amount of money that you get paid. Yeah. So I'll take this one back. Hopefully I can get more insight from the people I work with. So please, any other questions? I really appreciate the conversation, the back and forth, and I also appreciate all of us who have taken the time on this beautiful Sunday afternoon to attend this workshop. So if we don't have any questions, once again, thank you very much. Somebody says my email doesn't appear in the chat. Just give me a second. Let me check again one more time. Now it should appear. I hope so. Please let me know if it appears. And yes, once again, I would like to thank the Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, and TD Bank Group through the ready commitment for the support of the programs that we execute. Music Africa is a not-for-profit organization that puts together amazing events, Afrofest, and other things. And it's a whole team. It's not even though, yes, you see me presenting this book, we have a whole team of individuals, board of directors, volunteers, and everybody part of the Music Africa family. There's a big machine that goes behind the work that we do. And we all appreciate the support that we get from you, from the community, to enable us, our programs to be successful. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for being with us this afternoon. If you have any questions, that's my email address. And I hope